was sitting in the third row of a vineyard chapel outside Asheville, North Carolina, watching my husband marry my cousin in my wedding dress, and I was the only person in that room who knew what was about to happen. There was a manila envelope in my purse, thick, 142 pages, and under my seat, a second envelope, this one addressed to the IRS. Marcus was smiling. Brianna was crying those pretty, delicate tears she'd been perfecting since she was 16. The officiant asked if anyone objected. Nobody moved. I didn't need to object. Objections are for people who want to stop a wedding. I wanted this one to finish. Because a bigamous marriage isn't just a broken vow. In the state of North Carolina, it's a Class 1 felony. And I needed him to say, "I do," on camera. But this story doesn't start in a vineyard. It starts with a $312 charge on a joint Amex and a woman who counts other people's money for a living. My name is Denise Calloway, 34 years old, senior forensic accountant at Whitfield and Associates in Charlotte, North Carolina, which is a fancy way of saying I get paid to prove that people are liars, specifically financial liars, embezzlers, tax cheats, husbands hiding offshore accounts during divorce proceedings. I've traced $14 million in hidden assets across my career. I've been deposed in court 11 times. I have a framed certificate on my wall that says I'm a certified fraud examiner, which my husband once pointed to at a dinner party and said, "See? Even her hobbies are boring." That's the kind of man Marcus was. Not cruel enough to leave, just cruel enough to stay. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, which is the kind of place people forget exists until someone mentions potatoes. My mother, Opal, raised me and my brother Terrence in a 2-bedroom apartment off Fairview Avenue. She worked the front desk at a Holiday Inn Express for 22 years. Same shift, same polyester vest. She never complained. But I watched her hands shake every time she opened the electric bill, and I swore on my own bones, that I would never be financially dependent on anyone. Not a man, not a system, not luck. My grandmother, Pearline, lived with us until I was 19. She was 4'11", smoked menthol cigarettes on the back steps, and had this way of saying things that sounded simple until you turned them over in your head 6 months later. Her favorite thing to say to me was, "Baby, never fight loud when you can fight quiet." I thought she was talking about arguments. She wasn't. My thing, my weird, obsessive, possibly diagnosable thing, was patterns, numbers. I could look at a bank statement the way other people look at a photograph. The rhythm of the charges would tell a story. Where someone ate, when they traveled, what they were hiding. I started doing my mother's taxes when I was 15, not because she asked, but because I found errors in the H&R Block preparer's work, 2 of them, totaling $1,340 in overclaimed deductions that could have triggered an audit. I caught them because I liked the puzzle. That puzzle became my degree, my career, and eventually the thing that blew my marriage apart. But we'll get there. The one thing I always wanted, the dumb, embarrassing, soft-hearted dream I'd never told anyone except Pearline, was to open a small bookkeeping practice of my own. Nothing fancy. Just a little office with a fern on the windowsill and my name on the door. Calloway Consulting. I even designed the business card once on a free Canva template at 2 a.m. Pearline saw it on my screen and said, "That's the one. That's your door. Walk through it when you're ready." She died 14 months later, pancreatic cancer, fast and mean. I wasn't ready. And then I met Marcus Calloway. And for the first time since Pearline died, I thought someone believed in me the way she had. I was wrong about a lot of things, but I was wrongest about that. We met in 2013 at a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club in Charlotte. I just relocated from Boise for the Whitfield job. I was standing by the shrimp cocktail table, alone, obviously, because I didn't know a single person in that room. And Marcus walked over with 2 glasses of champagne and said, "You look like someone who'd rather be reading." And I laughed. God, I laughed. Because he was right. He was 6'2", clean-shaven. This warm baritone voice that made everything he said sound like a secret meant only for you. He sold luxury cars for a living, Lexus and BMW, and he had that salesman's gift, the ability to make you feel like the most important person in the room while simultaneously assessing what you were worth. We got married in 2015. Small ceremony. I wore an ivory A-line dress from a boutique called Elara in South Charlotte. It cost $4,200, which was more than I'd ever spent on a single item in my life, and Marcus teased me about it for weeks. $4,000 for a dress you wear once, he said. That's not very accountant of you, Dee. But when I walked down the aisle, he cried. Real tears. I saw them. And I thought, this man sees me. Here's the first red flag, and I'm going to be honest with you. I saw it, and I chose not to. At our reception, Marcus introduced me to his friend group, and one of them, a guy named Trey Wilkins, pulled me aside and said, Marcus is a lot of fun, but he gets bored easy. Just keep it interesting. I thought Trey was being a drunk idiot. Trey was being a prophet. The first year was good, genuinely good. Marcus would leave sticky notes on the bathroom mirror. Beautiful. Mine. Lucky man. We ate Thai takeout on the living room floor and argued about whether Pad CEW was superior to drunken noodles. He'd rub my feet while I worked late on audit files. He told me once while we were lying in bed at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday that I was the first woman who ever made him want to be still. I held on to that sentence like a life raft for years. The changes started in 2017. Small. Almost invisible. Almost. His phone started going face down. Not always. Not dramatically. Just at dinner. At the counter while he made coffee. One night at this Italian place called Rosario's on East Boulevard, I watched him get a text, glance at it, and set the phone screen down so fast it clattered against the table. Work, he said before I asked. That's the thing. I hadn't asked. When someone answers a question you didn't ask, they're not answering you. They're rehearsing. I told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. Then came the passwords. We'd always known each other's phone codes. Mine was 0917, Perline's birthday. His was 1234 because Marcus believed complexity was for people without confidence. One Sunday morning in March, I picked up his iPad to check the weather. Mine was charging, and the passcode didn't work. I tried again. Denied. I tried 1234 one more time, slowly, deliberately. Denied. Marcus, did you change the iPad code? He was in the kitchen making eggs. Didn't look up. Yeah, IT at work said we should update all our devices. Security thing. What's the new one? A pause. Just long enough to mean something. I'll tell you later, babe. Don't worry about it. He never told me. And then the gifts started. A Kate Spade bag. A necklace from Kendra Scott. A weekend trip to Savannah, just because. If you've never been with a guilty man, you might think this is generosity. It's not. Guilt gifts have a specific energy. They come with too much explanation. I just thought of you, he said, handing me the necklace. He just thought of me. On a random Tuesday, after working until 10 p.m. Sure. I should tell you about Brianna now, because if I wait any longer, I might lose my composure, and I've worked very hard to keep it. Brianna is my cousin, my mother's sister's daughter. Her mom, Charlene, went to prison for check fraud when Brianna was 12, and my mother took her in. When Mom couldn't handle a teenager in double shifts, I stepped up. I was 22. Brianna was 14. I drove her to school. I paid for her braces. $5,600 over 2 years. I paid for her cosmetology license program when she turned 20. I co-signed her first apartment lease. I did all of this because Perline taught me that family is something you build with your hands, not something you inherit with your blood. Brianna was at our wedding, maid of honor. She gave a toast about how I was more like a big sister than a cousin, and how Marcus was the only man good enough for someone like Denise. I have it on video. I've watched it exactly once since everything happened, and I will never watch it again. She started sleeping with Marcus in the fall of 2017. I didn't know. Not then. Not for a long time, but my hands knew. I mean that literally. My hands started shaking when Marcus's phone rang and he left the room. My body was solving the equation before my brain was willing to look at the answer. Now, here's where it gets worse, and I know you're thinking, how does it get worse? It gets so much worse. The summer of 2018, Marcus started this thing where he'd correct me in front of people. Not yelling. Never yelling. Marcus didn't yell. He calibrated. We'd be at his coworker Devin's barbecue, and I'd tell a story about a case at work. Nothing confidential, just the funny parts. And Marcus would cut in with, "Denise is book smart, not people smart, you know? She doesn't always read the room." And everyone would chuckle, and I would shrink, just a centimeter, just enough that nobody noticed except me. At his mother's birthday dinner, Loretta, a woman who once told me I should try Pilates because Marcus liked women who took care of themselves, Marcus said in front of 12 people eating pot roast, "I keep telling her to dress more like a woman and less like an auditor." 12 people laughed. I didn't. I memorized every face that did. September 2018. This is the one. This is the moment I need you to understand because it's the night everything shifted. Marcus and I were at the company holiday preview, a fancy way of saying his dealership rented out a steakhouse and everyone got drunk on the company tab. I was wearing a navy dress I'd bought that afternoon specifically because Marcus had criticized my last 3 outfits. I looked fine. Better than fine. And Marcus was across the room talking to a group of salespeople, and I heard him say, and I heard this clearly because the man never learned to modulate his voice when he was showing off, "She's lucky I'm a patient man." He was talking about me. The woman next to him, someone I'd never met, laughed and said, "Patience is a virtue." And Marcus said, "Yeah, well, I've got plenty of virtues. Denise just doesn't seem to notice them." I stood there holding a glass of Pinot Grigio that cost $16 at a steakhouse I didn't want to be in, and something inside me didn't break. It clicked, like a deadbolt sliding into position. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I finished my wine. I drove home. I sat in my Honda Civic in the garage for 40 minutes with the engine off, eating a packet of peanut butter crackers from my purse, and I thought about Perline. Never fight loud when you can fight quiet. Then I went inside and opened my laptop. Let me tell you about October 2018, because October 2018 is when I became a forensic accountant in my own marriage. I started the way I start every fraud investigation, with the bank statements, our joint account at First Horizon, our joint Amex, with the bank, the savings account we'd built together for a house down payment, $62,000 at its peak. I downloaded 12 months of statements and I printed them. All of them. I bought a binder from Office Depot. Yellow. I labeled it Home Renovation Research and kept it in my desk drawer at work. The first anomaly. A $312 recurring monthly charge to a VRBO property in Asheville. Started in June 2018. Marcus told me it was a client retreat space the dealership used for top buyers. The charge was on our personal Amex, not his corporate card. Red flag. I logged it. Column A, what Marcus said. Column B, what was verifiable. Column C, discrepancy. Within 3 weeks, I had 14 discrepancies. By November, I found the second account. A personal checking account at a credit union in Gastonia. 26 miles from our house, just far enough to be inconvenient. Just far enough to be deliberate. He'd opened it with his social in a P.O. box I didn't know existed. $47,000 had been transferred from our joint savings over 8 months in amounts just under the $10,000 reporting threshold. 7 transfers. $6,700, $5,900, $8,200. He was structuring deposits. My husband was using a technique typically associated with money laundering to hide money from me. And I'm going to be honest. It was the structuring that hurt more than the affair, because it meant he'd thought about it, planned it, calculated the amounts. This wasn't impulsive. This was architecture. December 2018. The bridal boutique charge. $6,200 at Alara, the same Alara where I bought my wedding dress, charged to the hidden credit union account. I stared at that charge for a long time. Longer than I should have, because I already knew what it meant, but knowing something and accepting it are 2 different species of pain. January the 2019. A $1,400 deposit to a venue called Ridgecrest Vineyard in Asheville. Event date, October 19th, 2019. And a Zelle payment. $3,000 sent to Brianna's personal account, labeled Dress Alterations. My husband was planning a second wedding, to my cousin, using our money. At a vineyard 40 minutes from the VRBO he'd been renting for their weekends together. And the dress. My God, the dress. He bought the dress at the same boutique where I found mine. I need you to sit with that for a second. He walked into Alara, where he'd stood behind me 6 years earlier while I tried on ivory gowns and cried because I'd never felt that beautiful, and he picked out a dress for another woman, for my cousin, in the same store, under the same lights. That's not carelessness. That's cruelty with a signature. February 2019. I drove to Alara. I didn't plan to. I was supposed to be at a client meeting in Ballantyne, and I just drove past the exit, kept going. Parked outside the boutique on a Wednesday afternoon when the lot was nearly empty. I went in. I told the consultant, a young woman named Margot with a French twist and kind eyes, that I was picking up a gown for my cousin, Brianna. Last name? I gave Marcus's last name, Calloway. Margot checked the system, smiled, and said, "Oh yes, the custom A-line. Beautiful choice. She's going to look stunning." Custom A-line. My dress was an A-line. He didn't just buy Brianna a dress at the same boutique. He bought her a version of my dress. I thanked Margot. I walked to my car. I sat in the driver's seat. And this is the one time, the only time, I will admit to you that I cried. Not the pretty kind. The kind where your face contorts and no sound comes out and your steering wheel gets wet and you can't breathe and you think, for just a flash, that maybe Marcus was right. Maybe I am boring. Maybe I am too plain. Maybe I wasn't enough. That lasted 9 minutes. I timed it, because even in grief I count things. And then I wiped my face with a Chick-fil-A napkin from the glove box, opened my yellow binder, and added a new tab. Ilara, dress duplicate. I took a photo of the receipt Margot had shown me. I noted the consultant's name, the time, the style number. Let me tell you what happened next, because this is where the story splits into 2 tracks. The life Marcus thought I was living, and the life I was actually building. Track 1. Denise, the wife. I kept cooking dinner. I kept paying Loretta's nursing home bills, $4,200 a month, because Marcus said he couldn't swing it right now, and I was too loyal to let his mother suffer. I kept going to his dealership events. I laughed at his jokes. I wore the Kate Spade bag. I was the perfect, boring, spreadsheet-loving wife. I was wallpaper, and that was exactly what I needed to be. Track 2. Denise, the investigator. I retained a family law attorney named Phaedra Whitmore in March 2019. Phaedra worked out of a small office on Moorhead Street with a dying ficus and a framed sign that said, "I believe in justice and billable hours." She was 58, 5'2", and had the energy of a woman who had personally dismantled 40 marriages and enjoyed every single one. When I laid the yellow binder on her desk, she opened it, flipped through 3 pages, looked at me, and said, "Sweetheart, this man brought a water gun to a knife fight." Phaedra explained something I already suspected but needed confirmed. North Carolina is one of the few states where bigamy is a felony, Class 1. If Marcus went through with a second marriage while still legally married to me, he would be committing a crime. Not a civil matter, a criminal one. And if I could document it, which, hello, I had 142 pages of documentation, the consequences would extend far beyond our divorce. Here's what nobody knew. Not Marcus, not Brianna, not Loretta, not anyone. I had filed a suspicious activity report with the IRS in January. The structured deposits, the 7 transfers just under $10,000, constituted potential structuring under 31 U.S.C. Section 5324. I flagged it through my firm's compliance channels as a personal matter requiring disclosure, and my managing partner, a man named Virgil Odom, who'd been in forensic accounting for 30 years, looked at my evidence and said 4 words. Nail him to it. Virgil became my secret ally. He didn't do anything unethical. I want to be clear about that. He simply reviewed my personal documentation on his own time and told me where the weak points were. He also referred me to a forensic IT specialist named Kenji, who, for $800, recovered 14 months of deleted text messages from a cloud backup Marcus didn't know existed. The texts were between Marcus and Brianna. 2,300 messages. I read every one. It took me 4 days, I ate nothing but granola bars and black coffee, and I read them at my desk after hours with the office door locked, and I did not cry. Not once. I had used up my tears in the Alara parking lot, and I refused to spend any more on a man who was spending our money on a dress that looked like mine for a woman who looked like a younger me. Some highlights from those 2,300 messages, because you deserve to know what I was dealing with. Marcus to Brianna, July 14th, 2018. She has no idea. She's too busy with her little spreadsheets to see what's right in front of her. Brianna to Marcus, August 3rd, 2018. I feel bad sometimes, but then I remember how she talks to you like you're an employee. You deserve better. Marcus to Brianna, November 29th, 2018. By this time next year, you'll be Mrs. Calloway and she'll be a footnote. A footnote, I'll be honest. That one landed. That was the one that left a mark. Not because he wanted to leave me. People fall out of love. It happens. But footnote. That word told me he didn't just want me gone. He wanted me erased. As if the 12 years, the nursing home payments, the dinners, the sticky notes, the night he told me I made him want to be still, all of it was just filler. Padding before the real story began. Fine. If he wanted a real story, I'd give him one. April 2019. I started phase 2 of what Phaedra called the quiet disassembly. I moved $31,000 from our joint savings into a personal account, my legal right under North Carolina's equitable distribution statute, especially given the $47,000 Marcus had already siphoned. Phaedra had me document every dollar with a corresponding entry from Marcus's hidden account, creating a paper trail that showed I was protecting marital assets, not stealing them. I photocopied every tax return from 2013 to 2018. I pulled the deed to our house, which was in both names but had been purchased primarily with my down payment of $48,000. I gathered the nursing home payment records showing I had paid $96,600 over 2 years for his mother's care. I documented the cosmetology school tuition for Brianna, $11,400 total. I assembled Kenji's recovered text messages into a chronological exhibit with timestamps cross-referenced against Marcus's calendar entries and our credit card charges. The yellow binder became 2 binders, then 3, then a banker's box. Phaedra looked at the box one afternoon in June and said, "Denise, I've been doing this for 27 years and I have never seen a case this well documented. He's going to need a very good lawyer." She paused. "He's not going to get one, though, because the good ones are going to take one look at this and tell him to settle." May 2019. The cruelest thing. Marcus came home late on a Friday, 11:40 p.m. I was in bed, not sleeping, listening to the garage door. He came upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed, and said, "Dee, we need to talk." I said nothing. On the edge, "I think we should start trying for a baby." I lay there in the dark and felt the mattress shift under his weight, and I understood exactly what he was doing. He wanted a baby because a baby would lock me in. A baby would make the divorce messier, more expensive, harder to execute. A baby would give him leverage. Or, and this is the thought that still makes my chest tight, maybe he wanted a baby because he wanted a baby with me and a wedding with her, and he genuinely believed he could have both. That he could live 2 lives and neither woman would be smart enough to notice. "I'll think about it," I said. "That's my girl," he said. And he kissed my forehead. I lay awake until 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling fan, counting its rotations. 847. I counted 847 rotations, and with each one I thought, October 19th, October 19th, October 19th, June through September. 2019 was performance art. I was the wife Marcus wanted me to be. Quiet, agreeable, present, but not demanding. I cooked his favorite meals. Baked ziti on Tuesdays, lemon pepper wings on Saturdays. I asked about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I was so good at pretending that sometimes I scared myself. But every night, after he fell asleep, I'd go to the bathroom, lock the door, and update the binder on my phone. A note here, a screenshot there, a time-stamped photo of the odometer on his Lexus, showing 847 miles on a weekend he said he stayed local. Brianna came to our house for the 4th of July. She sat at my dining table and ate my potato salad and told me I looked tired. She said, "You should try this new vitamin C serum. It does wonders for dull skin." Marcus laughed. I passed her the cornbread. I also noted that she was wearing a new tennis bracelet. Approximately 2 carats total weight. I estimated the cost at $3,800 to $4,500 based on similar pieces I'd traced in asset investigations. I later confirmed a $4,100 charge on Marcus's hidden credit union Visa. On the 4th of July, my cousin sat at my table wearing jewelry my husband bought with money he stole from me, and she told me my skin looked dull. I gave her an extra scoop of potato salad, because I was raised right, and because in 7 weeks she was going to need the comfort of a good memory. September 2019. 3 weeks before the vineyard wedding. I made my final preparations. Phaedra filed the divorce petition, sealed to be served on October 20th, the day after the wedding. The petition included infidelity documentation, financial fraud evidence, structured deposit records, the IRS referral, and a request for emergency asset preservation. I had a process server booked and paid, $175, which I considered the best money I'd ever spent. I also did one more thing. I called the Buncombe County District Attorney's Office. I spoke with an assistant DA named Rhonda Voss, and I explained calmly and with supporting documentation that a bigamous marriage ceremony was scheduled to take place in her jurisdiction on October 19, 2019, at Ridgecrest Vineyard. I offered to provide real-time confirmation. Rhonda took my number. October 18th, the night before. Marcus told me he had a regional sales conference in Asheville. 2 nights. He packed a bag. He kissed me on the cheek. He said, "Don't worry about me, Dee. I'll be bored out of my mind." "I'm sure you will," I said. He looked at me for a half-second too long, then he left. I waited 30 minutes. I packed my own bag. I drove to Asheville in my Honda Civic, eating a gas station chicken biscuit on E40 while the sun set behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, and I checked into a Hampton Inn 6 miles from Ridgecrest Vineyard. I ordered room service, a Caesar salad and a glass of Chardonnay, and I sat on the bed with my binders spread around me and I rehearsed nothing. There was nothing to rehearse. I wasn't going to make a scene. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to sit quietly and watch my husband commit a felony. October 19th, 2019, 3 p.m. Ridgecrest Vineyard is beautiful, I'll give them that. Rolling hills, white chairs, an arbor wrapped in wisteria. Maybe 40 guests. I recognized some of Marcus's friends. I recognized 2 of Brianna's cosmetology school classmates. I did not recognize Marcus's mother, Loretta, because she wasn't there. A detail I noted with grim satisfaction, since I was the one paying for her care and apparently even Marcus had the decency not to invite his mother to his bigamous second wedding. Or maybe Loretta just couldn't be bothered. Either way. I wore a charcoal gray blazer over a white blouse and black slacks, business attire. Because this was business. I arrived early. I told the event coordinator I was a friend of the bride's family running late from Charlotte. She smiled and pointed me to a seat. 3rd row, left side. I sat. I placed my purse, containing the manila envelope, a backup USB drive, and my phone set to record audio, on my lap. The music started at 3:22 p.m., some acoustic version of a John Legend song. And then Brianna walked down the aisle and I saw the dress. Ivory. A-line, sweetheart neckline. Cap sleeves that weren't on my original but were clearly an alteration. A $3,000 alteration. It was my dress? Not similar to my dress, not inspired by my dress. It was the same silhouette, the same fabric weight, the same cut, with just enough changes to let them pretend it wasn't what it was. And she was beautiful in it. I'll give her that too. Brianna has always been beautiful. 26, clear skin, that effortless posture. She looked like a bride. She looked happy. Marcus stood at the altar in a navy suit. He was smiling the way he smiled when he closed a big sale, wide, confident, like the whole world was a showroom and he was the best thing in it. The officiant spoke. They exchanged vows. Marcus said, "I promise to be your partner, your protector, and your person, for the rest of our lives." Those were almost the exact words he'd said to me. Almost. He'd switched best friend to partner. An upgrade, apparently. Do you, Marcus Darnell Calloway, take Brianna to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. And I pressed record. Do you, Brianna Renee Calloway? She'd already taken his name. Take Marcus to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do. The officiant pronounced them married. They kissed. 40 people clapped. I didn't. The reception was in a tent adjacent to the vineyard. Dinner was served. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, something with goat cheese that I didn't touch. I sat at a corner table and I ate a dinner roll and I waited. At 7:15 p.m., Marcus saw me. He was mid-laugh, holding a glass of bourbon standing near the dessert table, a 3-tier cake with white fondant and gold leaf accents, probably $800. And his eyes swept the room the way they always did, scanning for admirers. And they landed on me. The color left his face in stages. Forehead first, then cheeks, then lips, like watching a sunset in reverse. He set his bourbon down. He walked toward me. Brianna hadn't seen me yet. She was on the other side of the tent taking photos with her friends. Denise. His voice was low, controlled. The Marcus voice. The one that says, I am in charge of this situation. What are you doing here? I looked up at him. I took a sip of water. Congratulations, Marcus. Denise, I'm not doing this with you right now. You're spiraling. There it was. The phrase. 6 years of that phrase. 6 years of you're spiraling every time I got close to the truth. Every time I asked a question he didn't want to answer. Every time my instincts, my trained, professional, courtroom-tested instincts, told me something was wrong. I'm not spiraling, I said. I'm sitting. You need to leave. I don't think I do. He leaned down, close to my ear. You need to leave. If you make a scene, Denise, I swear to God, I'm not going to make a scene. I reached into my purse and placed the manila envelope on the table. But you might want to open this before the toasts. He stared at the envelope. He didn't touch it. What is that? Exhibit A. He opened it. I watched his eyes move across the first page. The summary page, the one Phaedra and I had designed to hit like a freight train. Account numbers, transfer dates, the Alara receipt, the Vorabo charges, 14 months of text messages, excerpted, the IRS referral confirmation. And on the last page, in bold, bigamy, NCGS, Section 14-183, Class 1 felony. Marcus's hands were shaking. The pages rattled. He looked up at me. And for the first time in 12 years, I saw something I'd never seen on his face. Fear. Denise, we can talk about this. We're past talking. Brianna appeared. Marcus, Denise, what are you doing here? I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I looked at Brianna, my cousin, my maid of honor, the girl I'd driven to school and paid for braces and held when she cried about her mother. And I said, You look beautiful in my dress. Brianna's face crumbled. Not anger. Shame. Pure, raw, little girl shame. The kind I'd seen on her face when she was 14 and Charlene got sentenced and Brianna thought it was her fault. And for 1 second, I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered dull skin and the tennis bracelet and 2,300 text messages, and the feeling went away. The divorce papers arrive tomorrow, I said to Marcus. The DA's office has everything they need, and the IRS has questions about your deposit patterns that I don't think your accountant can answer. But he's welcome to try. I picked up my purse. I looked at both of them, my husband and my cousin, standing in a vineyard tent in their wedding clothes, holding a manila envelope that weighed less than a pound and contained the destruction of everything they'd built on my back. Enjoy the cake. 5 words. I walked out. I drove back to the Hampton Inn. I ordered another Caesar salad. I sat on the bed and I called Phaedra, and I said, It's done. And Phaedra said, How do you feel? And I said, Hungry. And she laughed so hard she wheezed. What happened after October 19th unfolded with the kind of slow, mechanical precision that I usually only see in federal audits. Within 2 weeks, Marcus retained a divorce attorney named Glenn something. I never bothered to learn his last name. Glenn took one look at my documentation and advised Marcus to settle. Marcus, being Marcus, initially refused. Glenn resigned within a month. Marcus's second attorney lasted 3 weeks. Within 6 weeks, the Buncombe County DA's office opened a formal investigation into the bigamous marriage. Marcus was not arrested. Rhonda Voss told me they were building the case slowly, methodically, the way you build any case against someone who thinks they're untouchable. But the investigation became public record. Marcus's employer, the luxury dealership chain, conducted an internal review and found that Marcus had also been inflating his sales commissions by double-booking test drives as client meetings. They terminated him on November 30th, 2019. He lost the $145,000 salary, the company Lexus, and the health insurance. Within 2 months, the IRS completed a preliminary review of the structured deposits. They assessed a penalty. I don't know the exact amount. Phaedra said it was significant, and smiled in a way that told me everything. Marcus's hidden credit union account was frozen pending investigation. Within 3 months, Brianna's cosmetology license was not affected. I want to be clear that I never tried to hurt her professionally. But her social world collapsed. The friends who'd attended the Vineyard wedding were horrified to learn it was bigamous. 3 of them called me personally to apologize. One of them, a woman named Yolanda, said, "Denise, I swear I didn't know. He told us you were divorced." I believed her. Marcus was, above all things, a talented liar. Brianna texted me once. January 12th, 2020. 2:47 a.m. "I know you'll never forgive me and I don't deserve it. I just want you to know I'm sorry and I think about what I did every day." I read it. I didn't respond. Not because I was being cold, because there was nothing to say. Sorry doesn't unring a bell. Sorry doesn't put $47,000 back in a savings account. Sorry doesn't unwear a wedding dress. Marcus called me in February. His voice was different, smaller. The baritone was still there, but the confidence was gone, like a beautiful building after an earthquake. Same structure, everything shifted. "Dee, I know I don't have the right to ask, but can we just talk?" "About what?" "About us. About what happened. I want to explain." "Marcus, there's nothing to explain. You transferred $47,000 out of our joint savings. You bought my cousin a replica of my wedding dress. You committed a felony in a vineyard. And you called me a footnote." Silence. "I was wrong," he said. "About all of it. You were never boring, Dee. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I know," I said. "That's the saddest part." I hung up. The divorce was finalized in April 2020. I received the house, which I sold for $387,000. I received 68% of the remaining marital assets. The nursing home payments, $96,600, were credited to my share of the distribution. Phaedra sent her final invoice with a handwritten note. It was an honor to represent someone who fights quiet. Marcus pleaded to a misdemeanor charge on the bigamy, probation, community service, a criminal record that will follow him every time he applies for a job, a lease, or a loan. The IRS matter, as far as I know, is still pending. I moved out of Charlotte, not because I had to, because I wanted to. I went back to Boise. Not to my mother's apartment on Fairview, to a small office space on Capitol Boulevard with exposed brick and a good window. I put a fern on the sill. I bought a desk. I designed a business card, not on Canva this time, but through a proper printer, cream cardstock with forest green lettering. Callaway Consulting, Forensic Accounting and Financial Advisory. My name on the door. The door Perline told me to walk through when I was ready. I was ready. I think about Perline a lot these days, especially in the mornings when the office is quiet and the light comes through the window and hits the fern just right. She never met Marcus. She died before I moved to Charlotte. But I think she would have seen through him immediately. She saw through everything. She was 4'11" and made of iron and cigarette smoke, and she told me once, when I was 17 and crying over a boy whose name I can't even remember, "Baby, never fight loud when you can fight quiet." I fought quiet, and I won loud. The bookkeeping practice opened in August 2020. My first client was a woman named Della who owned a hair salon and hadn't filed taxes in 3 years. I sorted out her books in 2 weeks and she paid me with a check for $1,200 and a jar of homemade peach preserves. It was the best payment I've ever received. Better than any salary. Better than any settlement check because it was mine. The business was mine, the desk, the fern, the cream-colored business cards, mine. I eat breakfast alone most mornings now. 2 eggs, wheat toast, black coffee. I read the news on my phone and I don't check anyone else's bank statements and nobody corrects me in public and nobody calls me boring and nobody tells me I'm spiraling. Some mornings I think about Marcus's face in that vineyard tent, the color draining, the pages shaking in his hands. And I don't feel triumphant. I feel tired. Because revenge, even the quiet kind, even the justified kind, takes something from you. Revenge, it borrows your sleep and your appetite and your ability to trust, and it doesn't always give them back. But then I look up at the fern, and the light is good, and I have a client meeting at 10, and the business cards look exactly the way I imagined them at 2 a.m. on that Canva template all those years ago. And I think, I am not a footnote. I am the whole story.